Good morning. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with George Kurtz. It is week 11 of the fantasy football season. That's right, folks. Week 11 of the fantasy football season. We got you for the next 2 hours covering all the hot topics in fantasy football. George, great to be back with you here once again as we get ready for another week of fantasy football here. I know all of our leagues were really coming down to the wire. It's put up or shut up time in terms of playoffs. But it's great to be with you once again.
Absolutely, right? So the nitty-gritty in here in fantasy. Last couple of weeks, I assume you might have 3-4 weeks left. Generally, you played a week 14. Maybe you're playing a week 13 still, even with the extra week. Now, I know some weeks that are ending next week. It's make or break time for most of us here. We need to make moves here. We need our players to score. And the game Thursday night, unless you're a Barkley owner, probably didn't help you all that much.
No, it definitely did not. But again, we'll get to Thursday Night Football in a minute. Let's get to the quarterback situation in fantasy football. Boy, am I feeling it going into some of my games this week. I don't know a lot of people who are in my situation, but you got to start some backup quarterbacks. Let's give you some options here. We'll start off with the top story of the week in fantasy, Anthony Richardson. Did you cut him in fantasy football? If you did, it could have been a mistake, because he is back starting for the Indianapolis Colts. I wonder if this helps or hurts people. We will see this coming week. Also, Mac Jones will start for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is that someone that you would consider over Trevor Lawrence? It still remains to be seen. I'm a Trevor Lawrence guy, so I know that that's an issue for me. Keon Coleman going to be out again. So is Harrison Butker. What kind of moves, George, are these really worth making in fantasy? I know that, certainly in these two quarterback leagues, you're picking up crazy guys to start this week.
Well, you just mentioned it. I am also a Trevor Lawrence guy in a super flex league, and I was starting him this week because Kyler Murray is one of my three quarterbacks. He's on bye. Now I lost Lawrence. I was able to get Mac Jones, but I got to tell you, Craig, I'm not thrilled about this. I'm not at all here. Now, it is a league where it's 6 points for a touchdown pass, but I have a very good roster here. I could start someone like Tyreek. I have great wide receivers, great running backs. I could start Tyreek Hill over him. I could start DeAndre Hopkins over Mac Jones. This is generally I would not even consider. I would never consider starting a regular player, wide receiver, running back, tight end over a quarterback. But Mac Jones was terrible last week. Now, I do think he's going to have to throw the ball early and often against the Detroit Lions, but most of us expect this game script to be where you're down 2-3 touchdowns. But still, I have reservations about starting Mac Jones, who I think last week, fantasy-wise, may have had 8-9 points. And that's not going to get it done. I can get that from one of my other players here. So that's a decision I'm wrestling with right now. Do I start someone like Tyreek Hill or DeAndre Hopkins, or do I start Mac Jones in that superflex?
Yeah, you know what I did, George? I mean, this is going to sound crazy. I know some of you are watching out there. They're like, Craig is hosting a fantasy football show on SportsGrid, and he's picking up Drew Lock. George, I picked up Drew Lock, and I may have to use him down the stretch. I mean, when you're in a two quarterback league and you lose Dak Prescott and you lose Trevor Lawrence, and your result is you have to play some of these other players, there's really not much you can do. But as it pertains to Richardson, George, he was probably cut in some more shallow leagues, I would say, at this point. I don't know what the future holds for him. This was definitely the right move from the Indianapolis Colts. But the other thing that I have to say, George, I think that you would probably agree. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Going into next season, we have to stop this discussion about the reality of backup quarterbacks in the NFL. There are no good ones, George. None. Who's the good one in the NFL? I thought it was Minshew. I thought it was Flacco. There are none. I think that these teams in the NFL, they just basically are having to play their rookies because it's the best option anyway. And I think you're seeing that right now in Indianapolis. George, Joe Flacco, again, he's had a great career. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer or not. He was awful the last couple of weeks.
I agree with everything you said, by the way. Everything. Greg, there aren't 32 good starting quarterbacks. More or less, bringing it to 64 now with backups. You go to the Cowboys. Oh, they'll be fine with Cooper Rush. He was 5-1 as a starter. He was terrible last week. All right, you mentioned Gardner Minshew, who was a great backup, but as a starter, terrible. Joe Flacco, who's like 90 years old, terrible. It's not a good situation. Like you said, the Indianapolis Colts did the right thing in putting Anthony Richardson back as the starting quarterback, only because, listen, even if he still has issues, we knew this when you drafted him, that he was a project. and you're going to need to give him time. You were giving up a year or two. It's unfortunate that he got hurt last year and missed 12 games. That's unfortunate, but that's the price you pay in the NFL. You've got to let him play. Are you going to make the playoffs this year? Probably not. He's not good at getting the ball to his wide receivers unless it's a deep ball that happens to connect here. We know Pittman, fantasy-wise, his value takes a huge hit with Richardson at quarterback. It does. So does Downs, for that matter. Pierce probably not someone I'm considering anyway. So, yeah, I understand the problem here, but there's not much we can do about it. And I don't think anybody should be knocking you for taking Drew Lock, by the way. I think that's pretty good, foresight here. A lot of us don't think Daniel Jones is ever going to play it down for the Giants again. You're on bye this week. They're done.
Yeah, and I've already clinched the playoffs in one of my leagues, George, with no quarterbacks. I mean, my quarterback, I don't want to say who it is because you're going to throw up on Thanksgiving. It's Cooper Rush. Like that's who I got, man. Like I have nothing else, and I'm not comfortable with that either. Mac Jones, by the way, is still available in all fantasy leagues, George. I mean, from what I saw last week against the Vikings, now keep in mind the Vikings defense may be the best in the NFL. I'm just completely uncomfortable playing Mac Jones in any league. I would not pick him up at all. I mean, I guess, Etienne gets a little bit of a boost. I saw Tank Bigsby all week long has been questionable to play. He's been cut, by the way, in a lot of fantasy leagues. Maybe there's a benefit to Etienne. We've only been waiting 2 years for this, though. I don't know that I can count on that.
It's funny you should mention I cut Bigsby to claim Mac Jones just to have another quarterback just in case I do want to start him. Only because Bigsby has been, you said, questionable a week. Cost me a week last week by leaving that game so early and not getting any points. What a killer. Him and Aaron Rodgers I wanted to strangle in a couple of leagues last week. But such is life as well. It's the game we play, the risk we take here. So, yeah, like I said, quarterback, as the season goes on, we get these injuries. We get guys who aren't playing well. Yeah. It becomes a problem here. But that's also why I say it over and over again. That's why I prefer Superflex leagues. There's more strategy, more goes on to it. You're playing in a one quarterback league. You don't care. Jordan Love was actually on the waiver wire in two quarterback league I saw. I didn't need him. I have Joe Burrow in that league, but I took him anyway because I don't want anybody else to grab him. I'll take Love and screw somebody else for the hell of it. I had a dead spot on my roster, but somebody wasn't doing anything. So I was going to be one of those guys. But even after that, Stafford's available. Bo Nix was available. By the way, we laugh at Bo Nix. Bo Nix been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in the last 2 months. He's been really good. Scary.
Yeah, he has. We're going to get to Thursday night's recap, which, okay game, not great. George, everyone is calling this the game of the year on Sunday. But I know Butker's out now, the kicker. And, obviously we talked about this last week. For those of you who tuned in, Butker is a cuttable asset. You just have to pick somebody else up if you need a kicker. George, has it ever felt like there was a game of the year that's really not the game of the year? Like they're saying it is, but I'm not so sure a game that the Bengals isn't a better fantasy game of the year. I mean, I think the fourth quarter of this game may be the NFL game of the year, but with Kansas City's defense playing like they're playing, this doesn't feel like a game in Mexico that's going to be 48-47, Like the total is much lower than we've seen when these two teams have played during the regular season. Don't get me wrong, I can't wait to watch it. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that this is going to be one of the marquee games? I know it is on the schedule, but will it be after?
I mean, it'll be a big game, sure. So the game of the year, I guess maybe to this point you could put it that way, but everything you said is true. Remember, Dalton Kincaid not going to play for Buffalo. He was ruled out yesterday, so he's out. Cooper, I think, will play, but we're not sure about that. Coleman is out, and there's a lot of injuries here. I think it's going to be a medium-scoring game, so fantasy-wise, I'd be careful about that. A 48-44, I don't know if we're going to get 48 total. More or less throw in the other 40 there. I think it's going to be more of a Josh Allen game, doing whatever he can to move the sticks here. So I think he'll have a big game. Mahomes been blocked all season. We all, the last week the block kicked that one for Kansas City. What we don't talk about is Mahomes missed a wide open Travis Kelce from like 5 yards away. That led to that. That doesn't even matter here. Mahomes is not Mahomes so far this year.
Yeah, no, he's still a Hall of Famer though. Sorry.
Eventually. Hey, who's kicking for the Jets this week?
Hall of Famer now. You want to do that again? You want to battle that? No?
No, probably not.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back next, it is the game on Thursday night in the division matchup between Washington and Philly.
Chris Cyborg, 39 years of age. Larissa Pacheco, only 30. Cyborg 2 inches taller, equal measurement on the arm reach for these women. Slightly longer legs for Chris Cyborg. Touch of the gloves, and we are underway in our co-main event. Cauliflower.
I don't know, it might be
beautiful. What a level.
Big kick.
How did she take that? Pacheco just ate it.
Wow.
Measured and controlled in her breathing. Oh, nasty left hand snuck over the top for Cyborg. Pacheco, she will literally and figuratively smell blood in the water. Oh, there's a guillotine.
Another beautiful takedown, but she put herself right in harm's way. That is tight.
Good short elbow there.
Very nice.
Oh. Good overhand right there from Cyborg.
That was a solid right hand.
Eating some punches.
Watch the back of the head, quick. Watch the back of the head. First deep breath I've seen Larissa take in this fight. Just about 10 seconds ago. Nice takedown.
Rolls through onto an ankle, maybe. 15 seconds, and we're going to see some wildness. Yeah, of course
yes,
we are.
Both women landed there. They'll swing away to the final bell here.
9-46, I'll have it for the winner by unanimous decision. And now the PFL Superfights Women's Featherweight World Champion, Chris Cyborg!
The legend adds to her legacy. Chris Cyborg.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. My Washington Commanders taking a little bit of a dip the last couple of weeks. The offense has struggled a little bit. They really need a week off to sort of get things figured out. But, they actually could have won, George, this game. And, I don't want to say easily, but, Dan Quinn's done a great job. He's a candidate for Coach of the Year. Clearly, if he kicks a field goal and then loses, no one's yelling at Dan Quinn. But because he did that, went for it, didn't get it, we're playing the Saturday, Sunday morning quarterback, and Washington then just imploded, and Philadelphia goes on to win easily.
Yeah, we'll never know what would have happened if he made that decision there. Funny thing is, analytics said to kick the field goal. Usually analytics almost always tells you to go for it, but in that situation, analytics did say that the field goal was the smarter play. 4th and 2, fourth quarter, take the lead. Let's say, maybe he does it. Maybe Washington, that was a whole huge letdown when he went for it, and that play that just wasn't close, right? They bobbled the snap. Oh, Daniels almost didn't get it. Then he didn't even come close to it. So it's a crucial play. I understand Dan Quinn saw sort of, he is all gas, no breaks, the way he coaches. When he's coaching defense the way he did, it's the way he's coaching the Washington Commanders. So I wouldn't crush him for it. But that being said, I thought the right move, especially the way that game was. If this game was 33-32, I'd feel differently. But neither team was really moving the ball all that great. Take the lead. Take the lead, right? Force Elliott to make a kick, and he couldn't make it all night either here. I think in the end it was the wrong move. He'll learn.
Yeah, he will. Washington, of course, has gone through a couple of kickers this season. But I guess the focus really coming out of this game, and the question, George, simply put, has to be, is Saquon Barkley the fantasy football MVP this season? It is a fair question following last night's game, 146 yards, 52 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. You're going into your week, if you have Saquon Barkley, feeling like you're probably going to win, which is awesome off a Thursday night. It's like having Jamar Chase a little bit last week. What can you say? I got to tell you, George, his time in New York when it was coming to an end, I was not impressed. I thought maybe it was the end for him too. It happens in the NFL with these running backs very quickly. Boy, was I wrong. George, I think if he ends up rushing for 1,500 yards or 1,600, whatever he's on pace for, he's going to be a top 3 pick in fantasy next year. I mean, that's the direction we're going here.
Hard to argue with that, right? You said, is he the fantasy MVP? He was a first-round pick in most leagues, maybe top 2nd round. I would think right now I still might be voting for Derrick Henry, who was behind him, right? Derrick Henry is more of a late second, third round pick. And there's doing I think Derrick Henry, I know he has a touchdown in every game this season. So, yeah, I might have to vote for Henry here over Barkley if we were doing this today, but it's really, really close. Bottom line is this: Barkley's been great. All right, better than we really thought. I think the most important thing for me, Craig, is he's been healthy, right? He's played. And keep in mind, he could have more fantasy points. He's pulled himself out of a couple of games because there's a blowout. Think of that game versus the Giants, right, where he said, no, I don't want to set the record. Let the rookies play fourth quarter. Same thing last week versus Dallas. He could have had more points. But now, once again, let them play games over. And how many points would he have if not for the damn tush push? I had Barkley in a couple of leagues. When he went down on the half-yard line yesterday, I was flipping out. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me, because my opponent has Hurts. I'm like, great. That's a 12-point swing. I lose 6, he gets 6. I was so angry because you knew what was coming here. So Barkley's had a great year, and you just know the Giants, Shannon, the GM, like, oh, not again, not a prime time standalone game. Not good.
Yeah, you saw the fans at the end. Thank you, Giants. We saw that. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. He hasn't had a great season. That's goes without saying. He did end up getting you, 10, 15 fantasy points yesterday. 1 rushing touchdown saved the day for him. 39 rushing yards, 221 passing yards. But my gosh, did Jalen Daniels he need to do that at the end of the game yesterday, throwing that touchdown to save his day? George, I was watching that game as a Daniels guy, like, oh my gosh, like, what is going on here? I don't know, George. Do you think that Washington's being figured out a little bit? It seems as though they're really not letting Daniels run at all. And then the other great thing that Philadelphia did is they played lockdown on Terry McLaurin. My gosh, that was I remember the first couple games of this season, there was some worry that McLaurin wasn't going to be great, and then he was like the best receiver in the NFL. It feels like the game plan right now against Washington is A, don't let Daniels run, and B, stop McLaurin. But I would also say, George, those things being said, against Pittsburgh, if the guy doesn't go off sides, Pittsburgh punts back to Washington, they could kick a field goal to win. You probably would say that they could have kicked a field goal to win yesterday. Confidence-wise, the results don't look really good for Washington, but I don't know that I'm all that discouraged. I still think they're a playoff team, and they're a couple of plays away from winning the games that they lost.
You can say that a lot in the NFL. I mean, keep in mind, they won on the Hail Mary. Should have lost that game. All right, that was luck. Lovely cornerback there was yelling at the fans. I agree with pretty much everything you said, by the way. I think there's 3 reasons for Daniels' slowdown of late. I think 1, you already said it. Maybe teams have figured out the Washington offense a little bit. We know with sports, a game of adjustments here, so that could be it. Maybe they figured out Daniels a little bit. Maybe. I do think, Craig, that rib injury that he suffered a couple of weeks ago, I think that's hampering him. I think that's why they don't want him to run as much. He's not built like Ben Roethlisberger or Cam Newton. Big guy, right? He's more slight. Those hits are going to add up. So I think they're being careful with that. So I think that's a problem as well. Maybe they've been playing above their heads. Do I think they're still going to make the playoffs? I mean, the joke is, you said, I think you think they need a week off. Well, you play the Cowboys next week. That might be your week off. All right. It just hurts. Cowboys, Tennessee, New Orleans are your next 3 games.
Yeah.
No reason you shouldn't go. Right.
Yeah.
That's the minimum, right? You got to go 2 out of 3 there. Then it gets tougher, though. Philadelphia, Atlanta, back-to-back before you got Dallas again last week of the season, which once again should be a W for you. So you got to think, next 6 games, what's your worst case scenario? 3-3 is worst case. You should go 4-2. 4-2.
10-7 is their worst record this year.
Yes, agreed.
And that's enough.
They're in.
That's enough to get them in. Yeah, they're in. I got them going further than that, so we'll see. AJ Brown this past week, let's hit on him real quick. 5 receptions, 65 yards on 8 targets. Did you expect more? Yes. Did you get more? No. That's just the simple answer to that. As far as the running back on Washington is concerned, Robinson did get in the end zone early in the game. Not much from Austin Eckler. Still a lot to like from both teams, but clearly, as George said, Philly is the team that's playing better right now. All right, we'll take a quick time out here on Fantasy Sports Today. It's time to hit the waiver wire. Coming up next, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, some familiar faces that are still out there. We'll talk about those next. Don't go away.
together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. Time to hit the waiver wire. I know a lot of folks looking for running backs. I mean, across the league, take a look at some of your opponents when you're setting your lineups this week, and that RB2 is kind of scary in a lot of leagues this week. But first, let's talk about quarterbacks. George, is it time to grab Russell Wilson in fantasy? I mean, he does have 7 total touchdowns this season. He has 737 yards. He's been way better than I thought he was going to be. Is it a matchup situation for me? I mean, 2-quarterback league, it's a must, of course. But I still don't think he's a starter in a 12. I still don't think he's a starter in a 14. How about you, George? What's the scenario that it would take for you to pick him up and start him?
Watching Russell, all he's doing, Craig, is throwing a lot of alley-oop balls, and they're being caught. George Pickens has been great. He's just been great going up and getting that ball. All right, if you take that away, he's not doing much else here. That being said, you're playing Baltimore. Craig, I'm pretty sure you can get back there and throw a couple of touchdown passes against Baltimore. Their secondary is horrendous. All right, so I'm definitely starting him this week. You want to call him a quarterback 1, quarterback 2, whatever. I'm starting him. I want him in there against that team. They just give up too many points, and I don't see that changing all that much. That being said, I do expect Pittsburgh to try and take the air out of the ball this week and make this. They don't want to get into a shootout with Baltimore. I just think it's going to end up being a quasi shootout because you don't have a choice because Baltimore would score points here. So for this week, yes, but it is a week by week thing. I think he's more quarterback 2 than quarterback 1.
The Saints are down to Marquez Valdez-Scantling as their primary wide receiver 1. How this has happened has just been confluence of events. Shaheed out, Chris Olave out. I don't think that Marcus Colston is coming back. So George, you got a 31% owned Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I feel like, George, through the years, you tell me, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the player that no one has ever succeeded starting in fantasy, but he is the player you pick up after he succeeds in fantasy, and then you get absolutely nothing. That's my feeling on him.
Oh, I think you crushed it. I think you absolutely crushed it because that's exactly what's going to happen here, right? People are going to go out and grab MVS now, and he's going to lay an egg, right? Cleveland's a better defense here. Now, granted, Derek Carr's been very good at throwing a deep ball this year. Very good at it. All right, we've seen him hit multiple deep shots. So MVS is going to get his chances. They're playing in a dome, so you're not worried about the weather. I have no doubt there are going to be opportunities where Carr's going to put the ball up there. Maybe he comes down with it. Maybe he doesn't. But if you don't get that, if you don't get the long play, the volume's not going to be there. He's not catching 6 balls for 82 yards at a score. It's either, 3 for, 99 and 2 scores or, 1 for whatever, 28. So it's a boom or bust here. And there are 4 teams on bye this week. So you don't have Marvin Harrison. You don't have Malik Neighbors. I don't think anybody's worried about the Carolina guys. You don't have Mike Evans, who could be back next week. So maybe you need somebody. I'd have to be desperate, Craig. I don't want to do it. I'd have to be pretty desperate.
I would agree. Same would go for this next player, but I do think the dynasty question has to be asked on John Mechie, who finally is playing and playing a little bit more for the Houston Texans coming out of the University of Alabama. People forget how good Mechie was at Alabama. He was fantastic. He did score a touchdown for the first time this past week. George, I think as time goes on, he's going to get more involved in the offense. He's a nice stash, I think, in dynasty for me. It would be hard to start him, though.
I like what you're saying there. Yeah, I like Mechie. I do, but we expect Nico Collins to play Monday night. All right, now you got Collins, you got Dell. It should be a heavy Joe Mixon game. Dallas can't stop the run, or at least has a lot of trouble stopping the run. So how much Mechie are we going to get here? He's probably going to be touchdown dependent. I think he'll have some catches, but to have that that 12 to 15 point day, you probably need a touchdown. Which, hey, maybe Houston will blow out Dallas at home like everybody else does. So a good chance for it. I like the player. Just not so sure the situation is great now. If Collins is inactive for any reason, and I don't expect that, by the way, I do expect Collins to play, or we hear he's only going to play 20 to 25 snaps, I am much more interested in Mechie.
I think Aaron Jones is probably going to play this week, but I think if you have Aaron Jones, you may want to grab Cam Akers for this week. Akers is seeing like 20% of the share in terms of targets and rushing. He's not really doing a ton, George, but it's like live body NFL running back, kind of got to have him. Jones missed some practice time this week. I mean, I'm in a desperate situation in one league. I got to start him, but I can't recommend it. But if you have Jones, I think you have to.
Jones had a chest injury. He was taken off the injury report yesterday, so he should be good to go. So you don't want to start Akers over Jones. I think if you're grabbing Akers, you're doing it in case Jones gets hurt. Again, which he's gotten hurt several times this year. He seems to be a ticking time bomb where that injury is coming. So I don't mind holding on to Akers. Once again, you hope, I should say you're hoping for an injury, but you're covering yourself in case of one. But you're not starting Akers over Jones this week. Jones should be good to go. And if Sam Darnold can get going, maybe we'll get some fantasy points out of the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, Darnold's been rough, but the defense is so good in Minnesota. They're stopping everyone. All right, you know who's stopping themselves? It's the Dallas Cowboys. It's injuries. It's the light shining into the stadium. It's everything. We'll hit on it next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dog?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on SportsGrid. Strange dynamic has played out with the Dallas Cowboys in fantasy football. George is, known as a Dallas Cowboys fan over here. He's going to watch his Thanksgiving football. It's his favorite day of the year, and it's going to be a brutal game, unfortunately for you. But it's also a brutal season, George, for everyone in fantasy with Cowboys players. And to me, it's surprising. And the reason why, George, is because early on in the season, even with Dak playing, I thought to myself, okay, Dallas may stink, but they're down 31-10 in every game. I'm happy with Dak Prescott. I'm happy with CeeDee Lamb. And George, what played out, and I know we're on to Cooper Rush and on to like some secondary players there, Dowdle, we'll get into them all. But what happened with the Cowboys, George, is they were not even good in garbage time, man. Like that to me was the stunner. So that means they're just a bad team. Like there's nothing even bad in reality, bad in fantasy. You're down 40 points to the Saints, no problem. Just put Dak in, have him throw his 3 touchdowns, 400 yards, and I'm happy. I'll go about my business. But that wasn't happening. So for anyone who says that when the Cowboys play some of these good teams that are on the schedule the rest of the way, how can you have any confidence at all in starting Cooper Rush, in starting CeeDee Lamb? I just simply don't think you're going to get anything.
I think that's fair. All right, the Cowboys' schedule does not get all that much easier. They play Houston on Monday night. Decent defense there. They play Washington next week. We'll see. Hey, my Thanksgiving might be okay, by the way, Greg. They do play the Giants. All right, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, that's terrible.
Sorry, folks. That 4:30 game is not going to be not going to be a lot of fun. And then, then they play Cincinnati on a Monday night.
Is there any good games Thanksgiving this year? Who does Detroit play?
No, Miami, Green Bay. If Miami can get back into it, Miami and Green Bay play the night game. Maybe. We'll see. But even Miami's pretty terrible. So Thanksgiving.
And the Lions play who on Thanksgiving?
I want to say Chicago. I think they play Chicago. I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but I think they play Chicago.
Got 3 bad games.
Yeah. So
you know what I
spending
think,
time with your family. Okay, spend time with your family.
We do that, and I eat and I go watch TV. You know what I think that they should have done? I thought Ravens Steelers should have always been the late game.
The night game,
every year,
right?
On Thanksgiving.
The night game.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, that's me.
I agree.
I think they did that last year or the year before. It was a good game.
It's always a good game.
Yeah, this year.
Wow, maybe those teams don't want to be locked down. They're playing it every Thanksgiving night. Who knows? So we'll see. But about the Cowboys, listen, it's been a cluster of a season. We know that. It's been mismanaged from day one. I've said this several times. When you go over the chronography of the Cowboys, after they got annihilated by the Packers in the playoffs last year, what did we hear Jerry Jones say? Oh, we're going all in next season. Okay, they weren't. They let so many players. I'm not talking star players. They let good secondary players go. All right, and they didn't go. They didn't rebuild that. And then you don't. You wait forever to re-sign Dak and then sign CD. So training camp all went. And you didn't win any of those deals. You waited forever to sign them. CD did hardly participate in camp. His chemistry with Dak was off, and then they got the deals they wanted anyway. So that was an issue all season long. Injuries have crushed the Cowboys. No, I think they have 11 guys on IR now. And most teams, by the way, once your starting quarterback goes out for the season, you and I already discussed backup quarterbacks in the beginning. You're toast. Yeah. All right, Cooper Rush is a nice guy, but he went 5-1 as a starter. But if you remember that, a lot of those teams he played after, I think Dak hurt his thumb versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 1, they were lesser teams. They weren't the great teams. And Dallas was a better team then.
Yeah,
they just had better players. They don't have that now. There's been so many things that have been mismatched about the Cowboys. You think Deron Bland, remember that cornerback who had, 8 return touchdowns last year? He had surgery on his toe in preseason. Was out. They took him off. Well, they didn't take him off IR. They opened his practice window, which is 3 weeks. It's been 6 weeks now. And they have to keep him on the roster now because you can't put him back on IR unless you're going to end his season. Sure. Once again, mismanaged. Parsons missed 6 weeks, never placed on IR. Mismanaged, the roster spot here. The Cowboys and Jerry Jones live on hope. Oh, I hope he can come back early. Oh, I hope he doesn't need to be out 4 weeks. Jerry Jones with the curtain thing is just a joke. To tear down the whole stadium? No, Jerry, you should put up a curtain. And by the way, don't they have some chemical you can put on the window to stop the glare? I think they have something like that you could do as well. Your own players are complaining about it, Jerry. What are you doing? You don't want to admit you made a mistake here? I mean, I'm sure it's affected other teams as well, but it always seems to affect the Cowboy players. You saw CeeDee Lamb right away go, I couldn't see the ball. And it's happened several other times over the years. Just, They had a big WWE event there at AT&T Stadium I think earlier this year. Guess what they put up, Craig, over that window?
Did they
put
really?
up curtains.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, they showed a picture. The WWE showed a picture of that. They put, the curtains were kind of ugly. Jerry, get better curtains. As for the Cowboys for fantasy, by the way, you're not starting Rush. I don't care that Mike McCarthy said this week that Dowdle's going to be the number one running back. Dowdle's a jag. He's just an average guy. A running back 2, low-end running back 2 flex, but is he going to get in the end zone? The Cowboys haven't scored a touchdown at home in 2 months. Any kind of touchdown, 2 months. They haven't scored a touchdown at home here. Ferguson's not doing anything here. He's not a tight end 1 anymore. He's a high-end tight end 2 here. You're still starting CeeDee Lamb. You don't have a choice there. But, no. Craig, he's not a wide receiver 1 anymore. You and I talked about the fantasy MVP earlier. CeeDee Lamb could be one of the fantasy LVPs as far as someone who didn't get hurt, because his numbers are only going to get worse. Cooper Rush does not have the arm to get it to him over and over again. Just an ugly season for the Cowboys all around. There's nobody else. Tolbert, Brandon Cooks when he comes back. Nobody else I want to start here.
Yeah, and they're going to get a high pick in the draft, but they just invested that money in Dak Prescott. So naturally, a lot of issues for the Cowboys, as we said, going forward. So, I mean, the startable players in review, I think Dowdle probably at RB2, Ezekiel Elliott. I'm actually surprised Ezekiel Elliott is still on the Cowboys with all the stuff that's been going on with him. I know that they told him that he wasn't going to play or something. He missed a game. Jalen Tolbert, 33 receptions on the season in 48 targets, 367 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, I guess the question is, George, how do they fix this? It's always, the Cowboys are always one of the most fun teams in the NFL. They're the most watched. They're on TV. We see them a lot. But it just feels like there's so much work to do before next season. And I know a lot of fantasy owners are probably, George, are saying, I'm not even starting, CeeDee Lamb. But you're right. I think you have to.
Well, if you could sit CeeDee Lamb, you have a pretty deep roster, right, to sit CeeDee Lamb. I'd like to sit him. I don't expect big things, but I just don't have that kind of roster where I can sit him. How do you fix this team? Well, we know McCarthy will be gone. So will Schottenheimer. So will Zimmer. So you're going to get an entire new coaching staff. That being said, listen, it's Jerry Jones. I don't expect him to hire anybody real. He's going to hire his next puppet, whoever that might be. I don't want it to be Bill Belichick under any circumstances, only because I don't think I think the game has passed Bill by, as far as his coaching philosophies and strategy there. But I don't see Bill and Jerry getting along anyway. No way Bill is putting it with Jerry showing up in meetings and having all these talks after every game. The first person to talk to the media? No, can't see that happening at all here. I would like Mike Vrabel personally, but I don't know if that's going to happen either there. So there'll be an entire new coaching staff. You mentioned they're likely to have, at worst, a top 8 pick. I think they're 8 right now, and we overwent their schedule. I mean, Giants, Carolina. Okay, maybe you can win those 2. After that, I don't know if there's another win here. And the Giants, Carolina, by the way, you ain't better than. You're all the same. So I'm not guaranteeing wins there either.
Yeah.
Right. So they'll have a top 5 pick. You re-signed Dak $240 million. So he's your quarterback next year. So you're not drafting a quarterback. If you get a low enough pick, this could be a bounty where you could trade that pick to a team that does want a quarterback, and then you get several other picks. You rebuild that way. There's always a chance, Craig. You and I were around for the Herschel Walker deal. Maybe Micah Parsons is that Herschel Walker deal.
Maybe.
You're trading several to get several picks here. He would get you a bounty. He'd get you 3 number 1s. So maybe that's what they do here, because Parsons is going to get a top-of-the-line deal. You already got Lamb top of the line. You got Dak top of the line. Do you want to sign Parsons, who's great, to a top-of-the-line deal? Parsons also has a mouth, though, right? I think he's starting to tick off a lot of people, too, because he doesn't shut up. I think he was misconstrued last week, by the way. I don't think he meant to really throw McCarthy under the bus. I think he was just saying, hey, I feel bad for Zach Martin, who's going to have to retire, where a coach can go coach for the next 20 years. I think that's what he was trying to say. But when you talk that much, sometimes you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I think like some crazy deal for the Cowboys would be doing something like Atlanta did and, drafting Michael Penix Jr., who we haven't talked about at all this season. Thing note there. Be right back.
The sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Like Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Unfortunately, I missed you pinching your own cheek. As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, time for a little start or sit in fantasy football. I'm Craig Mish along with George Kurtz. It's time for us to dive into a brief list. We'll try to get through them all. We'll start off with the game of the century. It's the Chiefs and the Bills, Sunday, 4:25 Eastern Time. Josh Allen, you don't have to ask us about him. You're starting him. But what about Patrick Mahomes, George? He's looked better lately, at least. 13 total touchdowns on the season. Shocking number of interceptions. 9 interceptions. You play in leagues where you lose 2 points a pick. Mahomes has been barely even playable at all. 2,208 yards. Does he show up in this big matchup? How do you sit Mahomes against the Bills, George? This is a tough one.
I think in a quarterback one, yes, you can. I think it's kind of easy there. Two quarterback league, you can't. So it's that simple here. They're not winning despite Holmes, all right? Not all the interceptions are his fault either, and he's made some great plays as well here. So I'm not gonna bury Pat Mahomes. It just hasn't been a great year for him. For whatever reason, it hasn't been a great year. It's picked up a little bit with DeAndre Hopkins because now Travis Kelce is all of a sudden a great tight end again. Right? He was quiet for a while, but now he's picked it up as well. They will get Pacheco back. He's not going to play this week, but maybe next week. So they'll get that hard running game back also, or at least a nice compliment with Kareem Hunt there. Listen, it would be hard for me not to start Pat Mahomes, I admit, because you drafted him as a number one. So it depends on what else is out there in your league. What other quarterback are we talking about here? I wouldn't start Tua over him, or someone like that. What do we say about, we talk about Mike Penix? I wouldn't start Kirk Cousins over him. All right, Kirk Cousins has not been very good of late. And they say he has elbow injury, sure. No, I'm not starting him over him either. So you probably are starting him, but you're going to need to win with your other players. I'm not saying a huge, 4-touchdown game out of Mahomes. We haven't seen that all year. You're looking for 2 touchdowns, hopefully no interceptions, and throw it with 225.
All right, let's go to the running back position. And if you have 2 running backs better than Ramondre Stevenson this week, you're in really good shape. Although, I got to tell you, Stevenson, barely playable here. But the big number here, 6 touchdowns, 500 rushing yards. And, yeah, I guess he's a start, George. I look at some of the RB2s in my fantasy league, in these one-quarterback leagues, and I simply can't find anyone even close to him. There are players starting this week that are RB2s that have no touchdowns in fantasy football this season. So this is an easy start, no?
I agree. I'd say if you can do better than Stevenson and you have a deeper roster than I do, I would love to start him in a league or two where I'm really short at running back. And I was picking up guys off the waiver wire, and Stevenson wasn't there. All right, I would have been thrilled if he was. You do need the touchdown deodorant. You said it. He gets one about 2 every 3 games. What he does. He did miss a game this year. You got a decent matchup versus the Rams. Right, it's not great, but it's decent. The Rams are traveling cross country to play a 1 o'clock game on a short week. That's generally good for the home team here. So yeah, I'm starting Stevenson.
Tyler Algier of the Atlanta Falcons, the shift is on to Bijan Robinson. That's the only thing I can say at this point. Bijan has really started to take over a lot of the volume here. Algier's numbers really came through the first 5-6 weeks of the season. George, 429 yards. I guess he's a borderline start, but I think you're starting to see the transformation of Atlanta's offense going through Robinson.
Yeah, what took so long, by the way? What took so long for them to... we're talking 2 different regimes, Greg. Right? I mean, the Arthur Smith regime, they said they even wanted Bijan Robinson last year. And then even Raheem Morris taking a little bit here to realize what a player you have here. But I agree that the shift does seem to be on. Hey, maybe they were just monitoring his workload early in the season, building it up as the season goes along here, heading into the playoffs. Algier's a good player. I think he could start for a lot of teams here. And he's that player in that league one of the leagues I'm talking about where I need a starting running back, actually 2 leagues. I'm debating Algier or Audric Estime, whatever his name is on Denver. Which way do I go here? And let's face it, I need the touchdown deodorant. That's the only way either one's going to pay off. And they play each other, right? Yeah, they do play each other this week. So debating which one do I go with here? Odds are I'm going to play it safe. Go one in one league, the other in the other league. So that's the other way I do. If I don't really feel great about either one, I'll cut the difference and hopefully it works out in at least one league.
Okay, S to you, S to me, S to my. We're all family here. Best pickup on the waiver wire in fantasy football. He's not quite Puka Nacua, but Kareem Hunt has 5 touchdowns this season. 5 off the waiver wire at running back, 449 yards. I could have had him easily. What was I thinking? Kareem Hunt, man. What a great pickup he was.
I could have traded for him in a league for next to nothing. I think maybe Josh Downs. I think that was the player, and I turned it down. Mistake. That's a mistake on my part because that's in the league where I'm thinking about Algier starting as well. So if I had Hunt, I wouldn't have a problem. So 'cause he's a start this week. All right, Pacheco will be back. So starting next week, we'll see. What's going to happen here, depending on if Pacheco's going to play or not. We're hearing late November, by the way. Is that next week? It's the week after for Pacheco. And then it's probably going to be more of a complimentary situation. And I would think Pacheco might be the touchdown guy. He's the rougher runner, right? So we'll see how that works out. Hunt, it starts for me this week. We'll see that.
Cortland Sutton, I think this is a pretty easy one. He's come on lately, 42 receptions, 569 yards, 3 touchdowns. George, he's a rock-solid wide receiver 3. I don't think he's ever going to quite be what we thought, but it definitely seems like Bo Nix has been clicking with him.
Agreed. He may not be the superstar we thought he would be at one time, but he's a good, solid wide receiver 3. He's a flex guy. And you said it for your first sentence. He's coming on of late, right? Him and Nix have been at a nice little chemistry going there. And Nix has been very, very good. You're playing Atlanta this week, right? Not exactly the greatest defense. We know you could score on them. Yeah, I'm starting Sutton this week. Like I said, I'm not expecting huge things. Just give me double-digit points. A touchdown was great. But I think he's a good, solid start for you.
All right. Quentin Johnson, of course, he was probably cut by somebody this week. We talk about this every week. Quentin Johnson's like the most cut and added player in fantasy. Still only 20 receptions for the season, but he does have 5 touchdowns, George. Pace is for like 8-9 touchdowns this season.
I think this comes down to this. If you want to play it safe, you don't start Quentin Johnson. All right, find somebody else. But if you need points, if you went up against Barkley yesterday, whatever, who are they playing this week? That's the Bengals. How many points did the Bengals set up a game? Like 18,000. All right, so I want to start him this week. Don't get me wrong. Harbaugh's going to try and run the ball a lot. Right, a lot with Dobbins and Edwards to, once again, take the air out of the ball. He doesn't want to get to a shootout here, but Cincinnati's going to score some points. Chargers going to have to throw the ball. Cincinnati can't cover anybody. All right, so I do want to start Quentin Johnson, but not if I need to play it safe.
All right, real quick, Brock Bowers, tight end of the Raiders. This is a start. There's no question about that. We'll end there. Yeah, best tight end right now going. Maybe Kittle better, but Bowers has been great. All right, George will have his hot takes coming up next, his bold predictions. Don't go away.
sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek. As I was
that's what your
looking down
grandma
and did
does,
not
right?
know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Tony Bennett stepping down and resigning from Virginia right before the season started versus the Villanova team that, folks, I gotta take my glasses off. I can't figure this team out. I can't figure this team out for 2 damn years. And the problem that keeps coming up is the coaching of Kyle Neptune.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. I'm George Kurtz. He's Craig Mish. This is my favorite segment of the show. My bold predictions here. Now listen, when we're making bold predictions, we're not really expecting them to come true, but I think they have a decent shot of maybe some truthfulness here. The first one we're going to go with here is the Detroit Lions and Jahmyr Gibbs. This game, listen, everybody and their mother expects this game to be a butt kicking, right? They're playing with Jacksonville Jaguars. They have nobody left. Trevor Lawrence is not going to play. It's Mac Jones at quarterback here. Detroit's at home. Maybe they're a little ticked off at how they played last week. They squeaked out the victory over Houston. So I don't think they're going to be too angry here, but they want to fix some things here. Jared Goff did throw 5 interceptions last week. So it was my thought maybe to put him on this list as well. The reason I didn't is because I wanted this game gets out of hand early, when maybe Jared's not asked to do all that much in the second half. Maybe not even doesn't even play the fourth quarter. That sort of thing. So that's why he's not on this list. For Goff in the passing game, you may need to get your fantasy points in the first half. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he's going to have a big game here. Wearing some, he's not being used enough here. I think he goes over 100 total yards in this game, gets at least 1 touchdown. I can pretty much say the same thing for Montgomery, by the way. I think both of them combined are going to have monster games here. Both going to finish as top 10 fantasy running backs this week, and what should be a runaway for the Detroit Lions here. That is my first bold prediction of the day, of the segment actually here. Second one here, listen, Justin Jefferson, it wasn't good last week. I don't want to say they didn't use him. It's just that Sam Darnold was hitting the other team when throwing for him. For whatever reason, it wasn't Jefferson's fault here. Darnold just had an awful game. He threw 3 interceptions, 3, while targeting Justin Jefferson. I think they fixed that this week. All right, I think they fixed that this week against Tennessee. I think JJ goes off. It's sort of like the squeaky wheel theory. Whenever a wide receiver complains and moans during the week, blah, 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 blah. JJ didn't do that. I just think the way the game went last week, they want to establish him as the best wide receiver in the NFL again. So I think, once again, over 100 yards, a score. And I think that's being modest, by the way. It wouldn't shock me if he gets 2 scores here. Our next wide receiver, a guy who, he scored last week. All right, but it was an ugly, what did he catch? A couple of 3 catches or 4 catches, like 14 yards on the score. And that's Tyreek Hill. Once again, the wrist is bothering. Apparently since week 1, you've had some, you had a very good week 1. So what's your excuse there? I know the quarterback, you had Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley, Bob Greasy could have come out of retirement. It was just ugly there until Tua came back. Tua is back. Things still haven't gotten all that great. Right? You're playing the Raiders, though. Raiders are a terrible team. All right, they're bad. Bad. You're in Miami here. I think this game's maybe not a blowout, but close to it. I think Tyreek Hill is going to get at least one big play, 60-yard score, something like that, over 100 yards and another touchdown this week with Tyreek Hill. Maybe it's just wishful thinking by me. I'm starting Tyreek Hill, at least right now I am, in a super flex over Mac Jones, as I mentioned earlier in the show here. That's a decision I've made right now. I might change my mind, but what I've made right now. Christian McCaffrey, San Fran, right, came back last week. Solid. I wouldn't say they eased him in. I think he played 84% of the snaps, so he played what he normally would play here. But I think this week, Christian McCaffrey becomes Christian McCaffrey. All right, we're going to see him. He's getting in the end zone. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores 2 touchdowns. And by the way, if you're playing an anytime touchdown on him, you want him to score 2. All right, scoring 1, it's not going to pay off for that. You got to pay out minus 210, minus 220, something like that. So you want him to score 2 here. Unless you're going to bet him to score the first touchdown. But maybe you can do a same game parlay with something like that. But I think McCaffrey against Seattle, San Fran scoring 28, 30, or 4 points, something like that. He's getting in the end zone. He finishes as a top 3 running back, if not number 1 overall. I think this is the way he establishes himself as that guy. I am Christian McCaffrey. I am the best fantasy running back in football, maybe outside of Saquon Barkley, who had the great game Thursday night here. Last one on the list here. I said this one's easy. You're playing the Cincinnati Bengals. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Right? We're almost that time of year. It's Christmas. It's Thanksgiving. I think Herbert. I know they want to take the air out of the ball, right? They don't want to get to a track meet with Cincinnati, but you got to score points against them. And Herbert's been great. All right, you hear Harbaugh say it all the time how great Herbert's been. So yeah, I like Herbert a whole lot this week. I think he's a quarterback 1. I think you're starting him this week if you have him. I think he goes off 3 touchdown passes for Herbert, 250 plus yards, maybe even 300. Wouldn't shock me here in what should be a decently high scoring game on Sunday Night Football, which I'll be covering with Dave Martinez on In Game Live here. So that's what we're looking for this week. I think there are other things you can look for as well. Coming up in hour 2 here, we have Hold or Drop here. Craig and I will be discussing wide receivers and tight ends. Trade or Fade, the Week 11 fantasy preview, which we go over as many games as possible. DFS, buy or sell. Craig and I will have it all covered for you here on Fantasy Sports Today. Like I said, he's Craig Mish. I'm George Kurtz. We're here every Saturday morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Join us for the next hour. We'll cover you for everything you need to know here. Tomorrow morning, you got Matt Stryker and Joe Pisapia who do Fantasy Sports Today from 8 to 10, and they'll get you covered here. See you next hour, folks.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln!
But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was
that's
looking
what your
down
grandma
and did
does,
not
right?
know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Tony Bennett stepping down and resigning from Virginia right before the season started versus the Villanova team that, folks, I got to take my glasses off. I can't figure this team out. I can't figure this team out for 2 damn years. And the problem that keeps coming up is the coaching